Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism. I am your host, Ethan, also known as Climate in Transit. It's been a couple weeks since I've been back here, and this week I'm joined in with one of my co-hosts, Sully.
Well, hello. I just ate dinner. I'm sitting back. I join you from the void once more. The white void. Echo, echo. No. Anyway, I just ate dinner and I'm ready to talk about urbanism and stuff.
And stuff. That's
Yeah.
right. It's been a couple weeks since I've been on. It's been a real interesting couple of weeks not being here, but it's super exciting to be back here to talk about urbanism and stuff. And
And stuff.
also, yeah, I just got off of work about an hour ago, so we're here to discuss the important topics today. We don't, Sully, do you have any updates to go over for yourself?
Updates, updates. Yes, I have a few stories for you guys. I actually should have loaded this on my computer, but I think I mentioned last episode or the episode before. I've been biking all the way to work because the D line in Los Angeles is closed for train testing to the new
Mm.
stations, which is a great reason for it to be closed. So I don't begrudge them that in any way. And it's on time too. So it's not even like it's behind schedule, which is amazing. I think it's the only metro project on time. Don't quote me on that, but it's definitely one of the only ones. Anyway, biking the 5 miles to work through Los Angeles has been quite the experience. I'm trying to document it. Today, I had the great satisfaction, and I'll hold it up here, of basically for those of you listening, I'm absolutely zooming past a ton of cars stuck in traffic,
For all of
which
our
is,
wonderful audio listeners, Sully is essentially putting his life into his own hands by cycling in mixed traffic in Los Angeles.
yeah. And did you see that? I passed a Tesla, two Teslas,
Two
and I thought they
Teslas.
told us that electric cars were going to solve everything. Oh, there's a third, third
They do
Tesla.
solve they do solve traffic by getting
Yeah.
stuck in it the same way that every other vehicle does.
So that happened. I filmed that about an hour ago, and it's just so satisfying when you get to show the drivers how much faster it is to cycle by going past 30 of them in a row.
There's just like this prideful moment. I get this all the time when I'm in Portland, especially on any of our bikeways or bike lanes or anything like that, where you just feel this sort of like cycling euphoria. Even if you're not passing traffic, if you're just like bombing a hill or something like that, you really just sort of feel that cycling. I call it cycling euphoria, but it's that real like peak like cycling feeling where you're just like, yeah, this is the best mode of transit out there. And I get why a lot of people are really, really into cycling because those peak moments are really just something. They just really give you a good feeling.
Yeah, I experienced a little bit of that this morning. There was a guy on an e-bike alongside me, and there are other cyclists in LA. I'm learning that as I go along with bike routes. There's not many. There's a few dozen, not even maybe a dozen that I see every morning. And he passed me because he was smart and used the sidewalk to make a left turn, and I was using the car lanes. Anyway, he got 3 blocks ahead of me, but I could see him the whole time I was cycling. And I think I'm gonna catch up to this guy. And by the time I got to downtown LA, I pulled right up alongside him, and I turned to him and I said, "I caught up to you," and he laughed. And that's the kind of great interaction you can have while cycling because going on a race with someone on your bike is not deadly to all the people
No, no,
around
it's
you
not.
anyway.
Wait, you're telling me that bikes aren't the dangerous part and it's actually the cars?
I am telling you that.
That's crazy because every time I'm out there, there's always a dangerous cyclist putting hundreds of children's lives in danger every single day. And, car drivers would never do such a thing.
Yeah, I've had my close encounters too, just in the past few weeks with the car drivers. I got to tell you though, there is another danger on LA streets other than cars.
Really?
Yes, there's
What is it?
actually there's two. One, they're not cars; it's pieces of cars.
Oh, God, yeah.
You would be shocked how many bits of cars there are on, I'm not talking on the side of the freeway, on just like roads in LA,
Yeah.
especially shattered glass, but all sorts of plastic bits and metal bits.
Just
Um,
car tires. I've seen those in bike lanes before, too.
yeah, hubcaps especially.
Oh,
And those are
no.
really hard to see because I have to cycle due east,
Hmm.
due work, so the
Oh, you
sun
get
is in my
straight sun.
face.
Oh,
Yeah. And then due west, obviously, on the way back. So yeah, there's car parts everywhere. The other dangerous thing on LA's roads are the roads.
oh,
Some
yeah.
places they're just crazy. Like it's crazy the amount of bumpage, I guess you could call it, in like, in a short distance, how much the elevation can change. Like there could be a pothole that's like, 3 inches deep. It's it's pretty wild. And there's also parts which there's a bunch of areas that have the opposite of potholes, which I don't even understand how that happened, which are like little mountains of asphalt, maybe because cars have been driving and sort of changed where like the ruts are of the roadway. And
Uh-huh.
often that means that the bike lane has these little like mountainous sections, which are kind of crazy to bike on as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, it's kind of crazy how dangerous cycling infrastructure can get in a lot of different cities. I'll probably go more in depth on this, with, like just talking about it, but I really do kind of understand, like, there's like this almost like understanding of having more cyclists on the road means more safety. I mean, it's critical mass at the end of the day, but like you really feel it a lot more in other cities than other ones, and it really adds to an additional level of safety in some cities, or just at least the feeling of safety when you're cycling on some ways than in other places.
Yeah, no, and there's studies on that, by the way, multiple, because I was writing a paper for a local nonprofit on sort of what are the key things to get people to bike, and there's so much data and studies that of written by many more qualified people than me. What I was trying to do was synthesize them into something you kind of hand to a politician, and the
Yeah,
thing that
yeah,
kept coming up and up, which is really hard to pitch to a politician. It's kind of easier to pitch like infrastructure change,
yeah.
but on the number of studies that I read, it said that the number one thing that determined not just feeling of safety, but safety itself was the sort of a number of cyclists and how present they were as groups
Yeah.
on different streets. And that's just part of it's just visibility. Like, and I
Safety
feel
in
that in LA
numbers,
when I pull up and there's at least one other cyclist. I'm like, okay, everyone definitely sees us because there's two of us.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I feel that too. Like anytime I'm riding in a group, it's always so much significantly safer feeling than when I'm riding alone. But if you have any other comments on that opening right there, I mean that's pretty insane. That level of cycling. A lot of people who live in very cycling friendly cities would kind of see that as very unsafe.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
by the way, I don't know if you noticed when I held up my phone. Do you remember my old phone case? The one that was,
Yes, I do.
look it, it's a new one.
Ooh, we got the Strongtown Santa Barbara case. For those
Yeah.
who don't know, just to fill in, Sully and I actually met up for the first time, and this is I'm pretty sure you probably covered this in the last episode, but this is some history in Radio Free Urbanism, as this is the first time that two of the hosts have actually met in person. So we made Radio Free Urbanism history probably about almost 3 weeks ago. Wow, okay. It's been a minute. Well,
Yeah, I know. You've been gone for a while. You've been busy, and all of us want to know what made you so busy. But
yeah.
only the transit and urbanism parts. We don't care about the other parts. You
Yeah,
got
it's
married, we don't want to hear about it.
yeah, no. People don't want to hear about the stuff this time. They just want to hear about the urbanism when it comes to me.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, the past couple of weeks, actually, the just about a few weeks ago at the start of this month, I took a little trip to two cities that were both having some major transit openings going on. So I left my little cycling haven in Portland, Oregon, and made my way down to one of the most transit ambitious cities in North America, that being Los Angeles, California. And I made my way to the LAX airport station opening. Now, my fault on this part. I actually dropped the ball with this LA opening. I found out right before I left on my trip, probably about 2 days before I left, that the opening wouldn't be until 5 p.m. that evening, and I had a 3 p.m. flight out of Los Angeles. So I missed that opening by about 2 hours, which really did suck and kind of killed my morale a little bit. But I ended up doing quite a few things. Stayed around the airport area, which was a little bit different than some of the other times that I've seen Los Angeles, as mostly I'd stayed downtown before. But being able to see the area around the airport kind of opened my eyes up a little bit more towards how the majority of people live in Los Angeles. There's a mild presence of attempted cycling infrastructure that's mostly overwhelmed by a massive amount of car infrastructure that could also be amplified by LAX itself, and the love that airports have for multiple lanes on their roads. But it was also interesting to see really good bus frequencies there as well too. Big Blue Bus never seems to disappoint, running a bus even on their worst routes every 15 minutes. It was kind of exciting to see that, but it was also kind of almost humbling to kind of exist in a very, very car centric, very car scaled place after, living in Portland, Oregon, specifically near downtown in an area that's very walkable, where the largest road nearby me is like maybe 40 feet wide at most. And it's baffling. I mean, I almost felt like I had lost the sense of how like isolating car dependent spaces can be. I don't know how I like you just when you step back into those spaces, it's almost like whiplash. But yeah, I it was really interesting getting to experience, even from just the outside, the improvements that Los Angeles's metro has done to the light rail. I mean, they had their transit ambassadors out in full force, mainly because that was the opening that day, but it was getting to see a lot of these new stations, Aviation Century, and then getting to see the new airport station from outside was just incredibly interesting, seeing how it's just this very modern um, transit center. It's not just a station for the airport. There's a lot of different bus connections. You have two light rail lines going in there. And then, of course, to get to the airport, eventually they will have People Mover, which they've been testing pretty much the entire time I was there, but they had, they've been testing for a while now, and it'll be really exciting when that opens. But for right now, it's kind of just limited to those bus shuttles. But I think Los Angeles is a very nice modern transit hub connecting to its airport, or at least most of the way to its airport. I
Yes,
do have
most of the
some
way.
most of the way. I do have some mild concerns with the station though, and that mainly stems from the fact that there's not really a direct route to downtown, which, as much as LA likes to pretend that downtown doesn't exist, it's still a massive hub for working and for a lot of people that are visiting the city and just overall just kind of being a hub for the region. And this lack of connections at the moment to it, where you actually have to take an air train to one of the metro lines to another metro line to actually get to downtown, is kind of inconvenient and will kind of deter, at least in my mind, will kind of deter a lot of people from actually taking metro to their final destination if it's downtown. Now, a
And
lot of people might,
it's not just that it's a three-seat ride. It's the connection between the People Mover and the Metro are great. They're in the new LAX
Mhm.
station. But did you see the connection between the T line
Yes,
and the E
you
line?
have to get to the E line. You have to get out and walk over, what is it,
I'm gonna bring
Expo
it up on
Boulevard?
Google Street View for everybody that's
Yeah,
watching
it's
anyway.
it's a pretty wide street that you're dealing with to make that connection. I don't know how the C to the A one is. I think that one is maybe a little bit better, but I think it also depends on what time of day that you're doing that connection, because I think it really all depends on when you can actually make the connection there.
Here, I'm gonna share my screen here.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you got this. Okay, so here's another thing that LA Metro does that kind of annoys me. They love their station plazas. So like they clear out an entire lot and do this really, I mean, admittedly kind of cool looking plaza, but like never will there be any mixed use building on top of this station. They don't want to deal with it. And in areas where they're dealing with low density, or maybe the lot was already empty, or it's in the median, it's like, okay, well, whatever. But in a couple areas, like on Wilshire, particularly near UCLA, there was actually a proposal for like a 40-story building. And then they said, nope, we just want a station plaza. And it's kind of like land in LA is at a premium. We need housing, and also having commercial uses near a station is kind of great. That was one thing I loved in Boston when I visited. So anyway, here's your classic LA Metro Plaza. So you come up out of the ground here. You got to walk over here to this crosswalk. Oh, and now we're in a different year, of course. Then you got to now imagine you have a suitcase and you have kids and you just came from the airport. And it's probably a weird time of day. And you're standing at this like standard curb ramp, and then you cross this standard crosswalk across 6 lanes of traffic. Then you got to go up this ramp onto the platform over here. And it's not even, and I say standard because, like, there could even just be, like, a colorful treatment on the ground to kind of at least announce that it's kind of a transfer station or something. But instead, it's just your classic zebra crossing on, like, bumpy, not well paved pavement. It doesn't feel special. There's no shade. features or signage. You'll notice that there isn't really any signage either telling you what to do. And I actually got confused. I actually walked the wrong direction for like 10 feet because of that. Um, so yeah, this is like lame. And then look at the
Oh
land
yeah,
use. You got a strip mall. I don't even know what this is. This is
just looks abandoned.
an abandoned warehouse looking thing, a Shell gas station, the plaza, nothing's behind it. And then I believe this is a church here with a big fence around it. So I mean, churches are fine, but not, not like activated unless it's, church services are happening or something. So it's kind of lonely around this station and weird.
Yeah, it definitely it has some major disadvantages with those transfers once you get out of the station. But I mean, like, it is kind of super helpful that the station itself does have a lot of transit connections, despite the fact that the land use around the station itself is kind of not ideal to say the least. I mean, you have literally one of the largest parking garages in North America,
The
right across
largest.
the
The
largest
largest.
in the world or North America.
I believe in North America, 14,000 parking spots.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's just
14,800, I think, is the
that'll
number.
be one stop down the People Mover from the actual new transit station. And yeah, I mean, like, this is definitely more of a place where you're going to connect, and definitely you won't see riders end their trips at this station. It'll be very much in the proper definition of a liminal space where it's a place that people go through and not stay in.
It's the
Um,
back rooms of transit stations.
It kind of is. It's kind of going to be that. There's not really, I mean, walking around this area really just kind of like screams, do not stand over here, even with the construction, even if the construction wasn't going on, it would still kind of scream, don't stay over here. There's nothing to do. Just a lot
Yeah.
of airport parking. Maybe if you're walking to the Denny's nearby, but even then, Aviation Century is going to be the better stop for that.
And
But
here it is on Google Earth, Google Maps rather. Don't want to piss off anybody who's a Google Earth head.
Google Earth
Anyway,
had
yeah,
seating.
the station is kind of awesome how it's shaped. If you hold up your fingers like Richard Nixon doing the victory sign, that's the shape of it. And the two fingers are the canopies of the bus plaza, and sort of where the fingers come together is the train station part. And then on top of that, going perfectly perpendicularly, is the people mover, which yes, dead ends in the largest parking garage in North America. And what's kind of interesting actually is you can see here sort of from this map view, you can actually see the history of this whole transit situation where back in the 80s, it was planned that the east-west metro line, and this was before there were any metro lines, right? So they were starting from scratch. And the original plan was to have an east-west metro line that went into the airport and into the terminals, like the Piccadilly line in London, where it's like part of the transit network, but then it actually sort of becomes the terminal-to-terminal system. And then
Kind of
you
like how
would go,
SEPTA has the regional rail at the airport.
which place does?
It's SEPTA in Philly.
Okay, yeah. So then the basically east-west line kind of didn't get built where they thought it would get built. They ended up building it in the median of the 105 freeway instead. And then they dead-ended it, and they decided that the northwest line would service the airport. But then because it's, sorry, not northwest, the north-south line. But because it's north-south, it couldn't loop itself into the terminals. So then they had to build a people mover. And then there were plans for the people mover to connect to the multi-billion-dollar SoFi Stadium, which is only like 2 miles away. But by the time that nobody knew if SoFi Stadium was going to get built when they approved the people mover, so they approved the people mover to dead end in a giant parking garage. Then when SoFi got approved, everyone was like, oops, we could have connected those two things, because definitely there are people who are flying in just to go to a game, and even so, at least it could, even if that's not what people are doing, it served two purposes. It could be the airport connector and the stadium connector. So yeah, now we're stuck with no transit to the largest stadium. Yeah, it's the
No
largest
rail
stadium
transit.
in LA.
And that would only be the second stadium that doesn't have that kind of connection.
Which is the first that you're thinking of?
I'm thinking of Dodger Stadium.
Dodger Stadium, SoFi, and the Rose Bowl.
That's right.
The only stadium with a rail connection is the Coliseum at USC.
Well, there's also formerly Staples Center and now Crypto Scheme Arena or whatever it's called.
Fair. Sam Bankman-Fried Arena.
Sam Bankman Fried.
I'm pretty sure he's in jail at the low security prison in the county that Santa Barbara's in, not far. So I was thinking of going and visiting him actually.
Oh, that would be fun. I'm just gonna put some footage from
Oh
the event
wow,
itself.
that's
So
great.
here's or not the event, but here's the People Mover that we've got a little bit of footage of that um while I was there. We've also got some shots from Aviation Century. Um yeah, I just kind of made a nice little trip out of seeing, as much of the station as I could.
Is that a
There's
speed limit sign for the train
It
drivers?
is.
Don't they know how fast to go?
Um, I believe the speed is just for reference, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
We got some shots of the trains actually going from Aviation Century over to the actual airport station itself. But yeah, I mean, like this, as much as this has a lot of issues, I still think at the end of the day, this is kind of an essential connection, especially with, the time of the Olympics coming up for the city itself. We'll see if
Hmm.
it's ready for it, but this is definitely a project that was like need to get done immediately, and especially that People Mover is going to be real essential for that. But as I said earlier, I ended up making a flight over to the city of Phoenix the very same day that that opened, and I arrived in Phoenix for the opening of a new light rail project there. However, since I got in a little bit early, I decided to do some cycling around the city of Phoenix
Oh,
with some of my friends that I was staying with. But I just wanted to bring up one of the great innovations that the city of Phoenix has to offer. While they have been doing some great cycle tracks throughout downtown, and there are even some neighborhood greenways around the center of the city, nothing in terms of transportation within the Valley of the Sun could even compare to the city's reverse lanes. Now, for those of you who are unaware, reverse lanes are these lanes that can be switched in direction depending on time of day. If you notice this sign up in the little corner on screen there, let me see if I can replay that clip just because it's so important. If you notice that little sign up in the top left corner over here that I'm circling with my mouse, this determines what lanes are open at what times of the day. So from Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m., you can't use the center lane if you're going left or if you're going northbound because that's a southbound lane during that time. However, from 4 to 6, not only does that turn into a straightaway lane for you, that also turns into a left lane. And then at other times of the day, that turns into the turning median lane. So, if you can imagine, that is a total nightmare for traffic and leads to a very dangerous roadway situation. I just wanted to bring that up
oh,
because
I mean, so okay. They're basically trying to shove as many cars through the system
that's
as
right.
they can. I
Hmm.
assume that 4 to 6 p.m. So
Yes, so
is
that
downtown behind you?
yes, so downtown is
Okay.
behind me.
That's okay, good. That makes sense. Yeah, because
Yeah.
you'd have everyone leaving downtown. But my question is like at, you know, 5:59 or 6:01, like when if you're driving on it right when it changes, what do you suppose how often are these signs to remind you what to do?
They're
Like,
not that often. They're definitely spaced out more than a quarter mile apart. The only
okay.
people that feel the confidence to drive in that middle lane there are the most insane drivers that you will ever see. I actually have
So
a
they're
bit.
self-selecting for the craziest drivers to get their
They
own
are.
lane in the
They
middle of a
are.
road.
And here's that same intersection, but during a little bit of a light cycle, or at least me catching a bus going through it because a bus does use this corner. But it's kind of insane. You'll see the most insane drivers using that middle lane. Um,
That's
it's
wild.
it's I don't know anybody who thinks that this is a good idea. It's really kind of the most car dependent planning that you could do on side streets possible.
Wow.
And no one really knows how to turn into this road either, because you'll see a lot of people mess up their turns into it as well. It's kind of the most unsafe plan that you could really conjure up in your brain in terms of car brain planning for a city. I've never been more unimpressed or like disappointed by a transit plan in a
Yeah.
moment.
No, that's how I feel because I can guess that the logic that went behind it is we own this much roadway, and isn't it so unfortunate that we have these travel patterns? You know, most people are going in one direction at one time, most people are going the other direction at a different time of the day, and already own the road. Why not try and use it more efficiently? I'm sure was the word that came up in the feasibility study.
Oh, yes. Throughput probably came up through this because this was a choice out of the 80s, and this was really before Phoenix really built out its highway system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
What
kind
a
of a
disaster.
remnant of, building out a highway system. If you didn't know, Phoenix was really, really late to the party on building out a highway system and kind of honestly doesn't have as many as you would think.
Yeah, which is surprising. It's a city that almost happened on accident. It's like,
It,
oops.
I mean, it doubled by or it went up like 5,000% in a century in terms of population.
Yeah.
It's kind of a crazy place. And when you have that kind of growth, you need some form of transit to be able to alleviate traffic on these roads. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's exactly what the city of Phoenix has been doing, actually. So why I was there in Phoenix is not because I wanted to enjoy 105-degree heat in a resort in Scottsdale, but because I am a transit masochist who wanted to see the opening of the South Central extension that would significantly improve transit in the Phoenix area. So this was a major opening of a transit system out there, connecting essentially neighborhoods to the south of downtown Phoenix. I'll actually open that up on a map here. Give me
Oh
one
yeah, you
moment.
gotta bring out that map, man.
We'll see if Google Maps has it because I mean they
We
haven't
like a nice
updated
map.
their maps to include it
We gotta get
or
Alan
any of
Fisher
the
here to
other
complain
changes.
about the transit layer.
Oh my gosh, they still haven't updated it. My goodness, they're so bad.
Wow. Car
Um,
brain at Google.
let's go to Valley.
I like how there's people standing in the tracks over there.
Oh yeah, they had that one closed off for that day.
Hmm.
For the opening. Because I'll show you some more footage in just a moment. Let's
That's
get that
awesome.
system map
Do you know
loaded
how
up
many
here.
miles of track opened?
Yeah, it was about 5.5 miles. It wasn't
Okay.
anything like super, super crazy.
So is Phoenix so car brained that you're like allowed to drive on there if you don't see a train? Are the train tracks reversible too?
That would be funny, but that's not the case,
Can you drive
actually.
your car? Is there like a train car where you could park inside of it?
Oh my goodness, where is this map? I really wish that Valley Metro had a good map of the system.
Well, if you want to just open Google Maps, you can just trace it with your mouse, I guess.
No, I think I can find a map.
Okay, fair.
We're gonna look. We're gonna dig. We're gonna deep dive.
That's what we do here on this show.
We do deep dive. We deep
How's
dive into
the
everything transit and
how's the
urbanism.
land use around their stations there?
Yeah, so I'll go a little bit more. Actually, you know what? I'm sure y'all can just imagine if I pull up Google Maps here.
Imagination.
I won't dox myself today.
Is it that pinpointed to your house?
Um,
Oh,
I mean, like the pin on Google Maps, yes, is quite
oh wow.
accurate.
Well, no one can tell where I am because, like I said, I'm in the void right now. The transit and urbanism void.
All right, I'll get this all up here. If you can see, this is the former Valley Metro map here. You can kind of see this purple line was all considered just one line in the system. It's, I believe, about 40 miles, which is already a massive light rail line. But this new extension opened up down Central Avenue here, and you can actually kind of see it. We could probably get the layer to pull up. They have it in maps here, which is crazy, but like they don't have anything actually showing up. But this line essentially runs down Central Avenue here,
Hmm.
all the way down to about, if I'm not mistaken, Baseline Road. Yes, so this runs all the way from Central or from Baseline all the way up Central to downtown. But
Nice.
that wasn't really kind of the peak of this.
Hmm.
Essentially, what this project did was it kind of solidified Valley Metro as having a transit network rather than just an individual light rail line. So, what they did for this opening was they split the current network into two lines, into the A line and the B line.
Hmm.
The A line is kind of a north-south line running from baseline to all the way up into North Phoenix, while the B line, or actually, sorry, that was the B line. The B line's the north-south line. The A line runs from downtown Phoenix all the way out to Mesa, Arizona. So it kind of does that north-south movement there. Um,
Hmm.
but essentially, that that's what the main part of that was, as well as some major improvements to the system that were done that day. One of the big ones was weekday service went from every 15 minutes to every 12 minutes, and weekend service went from every 20 minutes to every 15 minutes. They also improved service on their streetcar as well too, from every 20 minutes to every 15 minutes on the weekdays, and they also added live tracking to that service as well. For this event, I actually did meet up with a group of urbanists down in Phoenix, and we ended up taking a bus into the event at Baseline. So we essentially all kind
Urbanist in
of board.
Phoenix.
I know, right? We ended up packing this bus right here. There's actually quite a wonderful community of urbanists out here who have kind of built up this whole system. And we ended up boarding and packing a bus and getting out into Phoenix and kind of seeing the community come out here. I mean, look at that. That's quite a few people showing up for an opening. They even had a real exciting thing. They had a lot of people kind of lined up for the opening here. I'm looking for some of the real footage that I got
Well, hey,
here.
being an urbanist in Phoenix, that's like being a frontiersman, you know?
It
Good
kind
for
of
them. They're
is if you
toughing
think
it
about
out.
it. They really are. They
They're
really are.
toughing it out.
They're doing some of the hard work out there. Like they're not
Yeah.
having an easy time.
Being
I
an urbanist
remember
in Portland like you, I mean, come on, that's easy.
that's light work. That's nothing. I mean, LA is tough enough. I mean, could you imagine Phoenix? I mean, look at that. The whole community's
That's
out
great.
there. They even had a little they had I want to get this on I hope I got this on footage, but apparently it wasn't that one there, but they did a little firework firing off there
During the
for the
day?
opening. Yes, during the day, but it wasn't quite like normal fireworks. You'll see it in just a moment here.
Oh, I love that guy's shirt. What is that? It's
Durango.
America. Oh, and there's cars on it. I love it.
Yeah, see they did like a little like smoke firework thing.
Whoa. It's like a
And
paint bomb.
and then you could see me accidentally turning my camera around on myself. But they also it was just kind of cool to see the event because it wasn't just there. They also had a lot of people out here in downtown as well too, kind of taking in the new. Essentially, they built a new transit center within downtown to make it kind of easy to make connections between the A and the B line. And it was just kind of a super fun event to show up for, see a community
Wow.
kind of get the basics of their transit built out, see, just kind of the start of a system here in Phoenix, Arizona.
And you
There's
say
a really
start because do they have big plans? I mean, is there a 2050 map somewhere?
There is a 2050 map. It really kind of extends transit out towards the eastern part of the valley. There's also some planned expansion of a BRT system, as
Mhm.
well as a Tempe streetcar and going into Mesa. So it's really kind of a start. They definitely have a long way to go. We may not see the most urbanist transit oriented city in Phoenix, throughout the entire valley in our lifetimes, but definitely the core neighborhoods are getting a lot better. They're getting that cycling infrastructure, they're getting that traffic calming on a lot of neighborhood streets.
Yeah,
And
that's something
another
a friend of mine said to me last week is he hasn't been disillusioned, but I think when you're like a fiery teenage urbanist and you're like every neighborhood we're gonna transform, and it's like maybe realistically if we can get any city that has inner neighborhoods near the downtown, if we can at least make it so that no matter what city you move to, you have the option of living in an urbanist neighborhood or not, and even if the or not is a majority of the land area, because of how spread out it'd be, it doesn't have to be a majority of the
yeah,
population. But it's like, yeah, if like the areas around these stations, for instance,
if we can get those
yeah,
transit corridors built out to have that transit oriented development and getting some more core neighborhoods to have that walkability and that cycling infrastructure that's safe to ride on, we'll definitely be making strides forward, or even just implementing small changes out in suburban neighborhoods.
hmm,
Things like corner stores, things like pedestrian cut throughs, and I mean cut throughs also act as, why am I blanking on this term here? I see them all the time as modal filters.
There you go.
Just kind of adding those into neighborhoods around cities can really, really improve just the safety of being a pedestrian or a cyclist in neighborhoods. It's really not that hard to make neighborhoods a lot more walkable than they already are. Just a
Hmm.
little few changes, a little bit of added density, and some nice modal filters can really do a lot for a community, especially one that's very car dependent. But it was nice to see Phoenix kind of, rally around its new transit project. Seeing the Phoenix Urbanists pack a bus was absolutely hilarious, and I loved that. Getting everybody onto a 40-foot bus and kind of almost getting into standing room only. We had to stop. I think we had maybe about 20 people hop on the bus at that stop. So you can imagine the driver's shock when we all piled on.
How many urbanists were there in your group?
Just about 20. Everybody ended up separating by the time they had gotten to Baseline Station, but
Okay.
it was kind of great to see. And I mean, Baseline really doesn't have a whole ton of great development around it. A lot of it is kind of emptied out commercial area. The neighborhood isn't exactly known for being high income. It's got a lot of people that are very transit dependent, which is huge that they're getting an improvement like this, and just having that ability that the city is already working with getting mixed use development and building up more residential in the neighborhood. So seeing that kind of improvement along that corridor in the future is going to be huge for the residents of South Phoenix.
Yeah. Speaking of an improvement for them, because well, I assume there's congestion in Phoenix despite how wide the roads are because everyone owns a car.
Oh, definitely.
So, is there any time of the day when this new line to get to downtown will be faster than driving?
I'm not too certain. Maybe during rush hour, but I'll just have to check that
Do you
and
know
make
what the
sure.
speed of it is?
I believe it maintains about 35 miles an hour through it. My biggest critique of the system, though, in Phoenix, is
Hmm.
that a lot of it does not have signal priority. So a lot of the time there are quite a few lights where you will actually be waiting for that light to change, so that way you can go through it. There are some areas with better signal preemption, but there are those intersections, and that's really where it counts,
What is
is those
up with? Do
major.
you understand what that? Because maybe I'm totally uneducated on this, but it seems like signal priority would be one of the easier things to implement. Is there an ideological reason, or is there a technical reason that engineers wave their hands around and say makes it difficult?
Yeah, I'm not too certain on that. I think it's more or less trying to get like the city to comply with it would be my guess. And
Mm.
I mean, it does take a little bit more infrastructure because you have to, add in that GPS tracking to it and that sensor priority there. But yeah, I really don't know in terms of why cities aren't super on that. I mean, I live in one where we actually do have it, even though the tracks are 15 miles an hour through downtown, but we still have it at the end of the day, and that's sort of, a huge thing of giving that transit priority. But in terms of it being faster than driving, it takes about 20 minutes to get all the way from baseline into downtown, and uh, on the transit, and it takes about give or take 15 minutes to drive from baseline to downtown.
Mhm.
But you have to consider, parking as a major thing that comes with traveling to downtown. It's probably going to take you more than 5 minutes to figure out where you're going to park.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
really, realistically, figuring all those logistics out with your car, it's going to be just about the same amount of time to take the train down there. Now, this is
Yeah.
a community where I believe it's about one in every five residents doesn't have a car.
Wow.
So that's going to be huge for the residents in that community,
Wow. In
having that
Phoenix, that's
transit
five.
access. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's not exactly a very wealthy part of the Phoenix metro area, so having that transit connection is huge. And Phoenix's transit, honestly, in terms of its light rail, gets really good ridership per mile for any U.S. city, to be honest. I believe it cracks the top 10 in ridership per mile. Don't quote me on that,
Mhm.
but it's definitely better than what you would think a light rail in Phoenix, Arizona that doesn't run at 55 miles an hour the entire time does. And it's because it runs through directly to a lot of major population centers. It runs through downtown Mesa. It runs through downtown Tempe. It runs through downtown Phoenix. It connects a lot of these big points and has, that direct connection for riders.
Right, it even runs right past cul-de-sac Tempe. Did you
It
go?
does run right past cul-de-sac Tempe. I didn't go this time,
Okay.
um, but I have been in the past. It's quite an interesting development.
Hmm.
Um, but I think one of my favorite things about the Valley Metro system is their station design. It's all quite uniform, and it kind of takes this very like postmodern mixed with like Phoenix nature look to the stations, as well as mixing in Phoenix art as well. They kind of have this very comforting like similarity to them, but also like we showcase different good parts of Phoenix. We showcase the communities that are here. We showcase everything that's within the city. They kind of do and I mean you have to in Phoenix, Arizona. They do a really good job of implementing cooling features to the stations. They have these like adaptive shade shelters where like any time of the day that you're at the station, there's going to be some sort of shade that's
That's so
there.
important.
It is massively important.
That's
They
better than
have
the sombrita.
Oh yeah, the Sombritas. Oh my goodness, LA Dot. What were they thinking with
For those
that?
who don't remember or know, LA tried to implement some shade structures, as they called them, for bus stops in LA, and they were pieces of metal the size of a skateboard that they screwed onto poles.
Don't forget, don't forget, Sully. They also had a little light on them.
There
This
you
was
go.
this was LA Dot. It was their what was it? Their cheap option for getting these implemented,
Yeah,
and I think it costs like $80,000 for five of them. So great job on keeping it cheap, LA. But
literally a
anyways,
skateboard.
back to Phoenix. All the stations, or at least a lot of them, have drinking fountains at them. Major important thing if you're in a city that gets over 110 degrees in the summertime. And I believe that they were testing some sort of like cooling like fan feature, like basically like you know how in a lot of larger cities there will be a button that you can push and get heat during the wintertime.
Mm.
I believe that they were testing a similar system with AC during the summertime.
Whoa. So I mean, you'd be outside, but it would still be
Yeah,
like cool air.
you get a nice little cool breeze. It's kind of like those
Maybe.
heating lamps, you know, where it's
Yeah.
like you would get like a little bit of cool. I think really what they should do is do like misters on the platform. I
Yes,
think
I
that
was
that would
just about to
be
say that. I love a
like some
nice
sort of,
mister.
and it's huge, especially in those desert environments. I think that that would be a really lot cheaper way of actually being able to implement that sort of solution without, you know, breaking Valley Metro's bank. But yeah, I think that that would be really, you know,
Someone would
important.
probably accuse them of wasting water. But
Someone probably would, but I mean, like a lot of places missed, you know, water. But I mean, if you had
yeah.
them on like 15-minute timers or something like that, I don't think you'd have too many people complaining about it.
So speaking of the AC, how's the AC on the trains? I'm sure it's powerful.
Kick it.
Yeah.
They do a good job with making sure that the AC is running and that you're not sweating to death on board the trains. New York, well, I mean, that is a legacy system that is indoors and underground, but you know, it's just nice to have it's nice to have AC when it's 110 degrees out.
There's no part of
Just
this system in Phoenix that's underground, right?
Mm, Um, I mean, there's areas that go under viaducts, but no, there's nothing that's
Okay.
like truly an underground like portion of the of the trip or like having an underground station. It's all above ground, fully at grade. Well, a lot of the stations are at grade. There's one above grade station,
Hmm. So
and
even
that would
so downtown's probably the slowest part because of
yes,
the lights and the block size. Okay.
yes.
Okay.
The
Well,
station spacing is a little bit better than some other systems running through downtown. There's not a station every 2 blocks. It's usually about every four or five at the closest, but
you consider that better.
better, yeah. I mean, I've seen some systems that the stations are every couple of blocks downtown where it's like there's only like 2 or 3 blocks of spacing. There's less than a quarter mile between stations.
Hmm.
But I think if you're going to do ad surface, you need to have some sort of like actual good amount of distance between stations because I mean, people can walk a quarter mile.
So my important question for you is one of the things I care about most is the land use because you mentioned the high
Yeah.
ridership per mile, but I was wondering just looking at the low density Phoenix suburbs. Obviously, there's only some certain number of people walking distance to each station.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of the land use now? Are there plans that you know of to increase the density, and are they doing park and rides or like some other systems that absolutely love that, or what's sort of their approach?
So Phoenix does love its park and rides. I mean, it's a very car dependent city, but the city itself, or at least Valley Metro, has done a decent amount of transit-oriented development. I know that there are plans for some of these South Central stations to get some sort of TOD around them, especially Baseline. They already have a plan for transit-oriented development around the farthest south end of the station at Baseline and Central.
Hmm.
But they are working on some other major TOD projects in the region. Another big one being up on the northern end of the B line at Metro Parkway. The station's at a formerly abandoned mall that is now being redeveloped into a billion-dollar transit-oriented development
Ooh.
project.
Low parking,
Um,
I hope.
Low parking. There is still parking at it, but it's definitely not as high as some other stations. A lot of the stations themselves, though, um, do contain some sort of parking, but within downtown and midtown, which is just north on Central Avenue, north of downtown, there's not really a whole ton of parking, and there's actually some pretty decent land use around the stations. For the Phoenix area, obviously it's not perfect,
Yeah.
but the real, as well as Tempe, or not Tempe, Mesa has a lot of real shining examples of good land use around the stations. The real big one though is Tempe. Tempe has some absolutely great medium and high level density around the stations themselves. Um, a lot of it is fairly walkable, definitely bikeable in the area. And also, the addition of some last mile transit connections as well is really strong in Tempe itself. They not only have the streetcar, which is a great last mile connection, especially to destinations around Arizona State University, which is a huge trip generator for Valley Metro, but also the Orbit bus system, which is kind of a last mile circulator system,
Cool
is
name.
huge for Valley Metro ridership.
Okay. I've heard this whole thing about Tempe. I gotta go check it out sometime. It sounds
Tempe
awesome.
is a very surprisingly urbanist city. It's got some transit-oriented hiking. I'd recommend it if you're going in like the wintertime.
Yeah.
Don't go in July. Oh my
No,
God. Unless you like that heat, in that case, then go in July. But like,
I know.
yeah, it's definitely a city. It's very
I
lively in
Yeah.
January, especially.
Okay, yeah, yeah. No, I've been to the Dead Sea in July. It was 117, I want to say.
Yeah, it'll hit that, and then it will also rain on you in Tempe. So yeah, just make sure if you go to Tempe, Arizona, and you want to ride some streetcars or take some circulator buses or ride Valley Metro, go in like December, January. If you're going in July, bring a solar umbrella, bring some misters, and try and stay a little bit more indoors than
It's
outdoors.
kind of weird. It's like it induces the same behavior that people would have in winter in cold places of like not
Oh,
wanting to be outside.
definitely. Definitely. That's a very Southwest thing. A lot of people also love going out at night, which is why I think overnight transit would be really important out there, especially in the summertime, and just kind of promoting staying out of the heat. I think that that could be a huge thing for a lot of these Southwest
And so
cities
would
too.
like urbanist neighborhoods because one thing I noticed being in very hot places abroad versus here is like, or even in Mexico, like the urbanism enables the, I guess you'd call it patio culture, is how I've seen it,
Yeah.
or sidewalk culture. Especially friends of mine who've been to Mexico City and show me pictures, like, yeah, like you can wander around at like 12 a.m. and there's hundreds of people out at these tables and stuff. Whereas if you design a city, that's the weird thing about America, right? We kind of designed every suburb and every city as though they all have the same weather, and no one knows what I don't know what the ideal weather would be for these sort of sprawly suburbs, but like
Nowhere.
yeah, there's no like ideal. Maybe where I live on the central coast of California. Well, these cities are not ideal, but I'm saying that at least where you're not either baking because of all the asphalt or freezing because of how much space there is between stuff. But yeah, so it's sort of a shame that if you look at like traditional desert cultures, even in the Southwest, the Pueblo Indians, where they built their
Oh yeah.
homes under a cliff altogether and whatever, and it's like, yeah, bad urbanism can kill an otherwise perfect spot for sidewalk culture, which would otherwise
Because
be flourishing.
Phoenix could have a very strong sidewalk culture. I think a lot of people underestimate this about desert cities, but people out there love to get outside. And if it's below 100 degrees, people are going to be outside. You might see 97 and be like, oh, ew, keep that away from me. But out in the desert, really doesn't feel as horrible as you might think.
It's
You get
dry.
some misters and some fans
Yeah.
on, and it's perfectly fine to go and sit out on a nice patio. A lot of places in Phoenix and Tempe have really taken this to their advantage, And there really has been this kind of like culture that's building up around that. They also do a First Fridays at nighttime when it's a little bit cooler. They shut off some streets in downtown Phoenix and have a really nice market. I think I did get some footage of that too.
I was going
But
to ask if they do any pedestrian streets. Are there any? There's
um
no permanent ones in the whole Phoenix area.
there is a couple. Actually, I showcased it a little bit earlier. I'll get it open up in just a second. But they created a new downtown plaza that's completely car free, thanks to the new Valley Metro extensions. Let me see if I can get that footage up
But
here.
I've been
Uh,
told by politicians that car-free plazas don't work.
no, they never work apparently.
They all
Um,
close down.
This is true. They're always financial flops. If you can see right here, this plaza right here is one block, but it is completely car free. It
Absolute
actually
flop.
has transit going right through it. It's this plaza kind of continues both to the east and west and has businesses all throughout it. Some really nice places to sit down. Some stores as well too. It's really quite a nice little pedestrian area in the heart of downtown Phoenix. Downtown Phoenix is really kind of booming right now, and it's really exciting to see these transit connections make their way here.
Do people live down there, or is it
They
just
do.
offices?
Yeah, so there is quite a large population of people who actually live in downtown Phoenix.
Hmm.
My friends do live down there. They run accounts Urban Avenues and then Skitches Transit. But they do live downtown. They bike everywhere. They take the train everywhere, and ever so occasionally they have to ride share. But
Hmm.
for the most part, they are living car free in downtown Phoenix.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's actually quite amazing
Congratulations
to
to
see
them.
people doing that. It's kind of like living urbanism on the hardest mode, but you know what? They're making it work. They're doing really well. And seeing that happen and seeing that people can actually do that is kind of amazing.
Yeah, no, I think the hardest place to be urban is I think actually Las Vegas would be more difficult.
Yeah, it you're telling me that was a little difficult. Downtown's probably not that bad. The buses in Vegas are just they're honestly really good and they run 24/7. If you were to live in like the Arts District or Fremont East in Las Vegas, you could probably pull it off. But me personally, I like having a train, so
Yeah.
and I don't like baking at
I'm
120
shocked,
degree
Ethan.
heat.
I had no idea you liked having a train.
I mean, who would have thought that? Who on earth would have thought that?
So,
But
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I was just kind of thinking that we were probably going to be wrapping this up pretty soon unless we had anything else to talk about.
I had one thing actually, because we've spent the whole show down in the Southwest in Los Angeles. I did want to mention the federal bill that's in the Senate right now, which proposes to sell off BLM, Bureau of Land
Oh
Management's
yeah.
land. So I believe the initial bill could have sold a vast portion of it, and now that has somehow been lowered to 3 million acres,
Which is
um,
still insane.
which is insane. Basically, they said, okay, okay, we'll only sell off BLM land that's within 5 miles of a town. Now, the problem with that is in America, weird things are defined as towns. So I'm not sure in Utah what counts as a town and what doesn't. The craziest thing to me is that the guy spearheading this idea, and apparently he's been pushing for it since 2012, so I'm sure he's quite happy, is one of the state senators from Utah. So I
Yes.
would have thought it would have been led by people from cities who like don't understand like rural areas, but no, this guy's from Utah, and I would think that his constituency would deeply care and identify with the open, not only the untouched land, but the fact that it's open to the public around places like Moab, which would be for sale. So I don't know if you're, I don't know who listens here who lives in Utah, but like, call and
I
complain.
do
That's
remember
wild.
they did have a state bill on that to sell off a bunch of public land. However, that got immense backlash and was pretty much rejected. I remember this was happening back in 2024.
So then, why is this guy still in the government? Like, why
Gas
is he?
money is a hell of a drug.
Yeah. So I brought up for those not watching, I've brought up the map here. Now this is like I said, this is as of 6/14. So I don't know. That's 10 days ago. Like I said, I think some things have changed. But the green land here is national forest. The orange land is BLM land. What's kind of cool, I'll say the one thing that's cool is you can see where the Transcontinental Railroad went. Do you see it, Ethan, here?
Yes, I do.
It went right here.
Oh yeah, and you can still see the highway that follows it too.
You can see that, but you can see when the federal government sold off, they did their checkerboard pattern, which is they, in order to fund the railroad, they allowed the railroad to keep half of all the land along the right of way, and the way that they worked out half was they did every other parcel, which is crazy, which has led to one of my favorite legal cases, which is that, like, it's not this exact spot, but there's one of these basically here, right, where imagine it, for those not watching, imagine a chessboard, right, with white and black pieces. The white pieces are privately owned, the black pieces are public land. So there's actually many pieces of public land that are surrounded on four sides by private land and only connected at the corners to other public land. So the question is, if you hop from this corner to this one, into this piece of public land to another, are you trespassing on private property? Because humans are not finite points. but the two pieces of public land only touch at a finite point. So there's actually a lawsuit happening right now where there's a landowner claiming people are trespassing on his land where they're hopping the corner into another piece of public land. So, but anyway, that's a side topic. The important part of this story is this is an insane amount of land. And one of the things that you might notice looking at this map is basically none of it is near any large cities. And I know we're beating a dead horse because we did talk about this on another episode, where we were making fun of the freedom
Yes,
cities.
that's right, because this is kind of in line with that. I mean, this is kind of the steps to getting those freedom cities.
Yeah, and like okay, yes, on paper, so much land, so much housing, but also like this is the most remote land in the United States.
You do
With
not want to build on 90% of this land.
no,
I will tell you this right now. You do not want to build on most of Nevada. If you zoom in on southern Nevada, I'm pretty sure they highlight areas that are on salt flats that they want to develop.
yeah,
Yep,
oh
if
yeah,
you see that blue corner near Nelson there,
yeah.
that's salt flat right
Well,
there.
this area is literally called borax, which is like a
Yeah.
chemical from a salt flat. So yeah, it's kind of disastrous, which is kind of how a lot of people know and are saying this isn't really for housing; it's for mining rights. Because
Oh,
once people own
100%.
the land, they'll probably use it for mining, not to actually build housing.
There'll probably be like two or three developments that they scream are like the greatest places ever to live.
Yeah, I saw this week. I saw an
And I
ad
wonder
for a
how they'll
resort.
vote in those cities.
What'd you say?
And I wonder how they'll vote in those cities. But it's
Yeah,
also
yeah.
not just mining. Ski resort companies like Vail, basically the big dog monopoly of skiing,
Hmm.
absolutely love this because this allows them to actually open up more resorts to milk you more money.
That's crazy. Although again, most of this land is not resort worthy or housing worthy. It's actual
No.
garbage land. Not for the animals and plants that live there, but for human habitation. Yeah, so actually, surprisingly, I know I said there's very few places where this is near anywhere in demand, but to be perfectly honest, there is land right up against the urbanized area of Santa Barbara, which would be for sale, which is in demand. However, looking at the topographic overlay, you can see that it is
Hmm.
insanely mountainous, which is why nobody lives there. There are no roads here. I don't understand who this is for or what constituency this will make happy
It's for
because
mining to make your water worse.
but
You're
there's no
welcome.
mining, there's nothing in these mountains. There's no like I don't know. This is so bizarre to me. There's literally here. I'm going to show you what this mountain range looks like really quick before we close out the show. Let's see. San Ynez.
Oh yeah, it's steep. For the viewers listening, this is pretty much just mountains butted up right against the ocean.
Yeah, it is. There you go. So here, wow, look, there's Santa Barbara, my home sweet home, and of course, the image is tiny. There you go. So yeah, this land is going to be for sale. Land so
No
steep
images
it
popping
creates its
up.
own shadows. So good luck like living up here. This is 4,000 feet above sea level, by the way. This peak.
I'm not seeing anything on my end.
Oh, that's not good. Oh, I
I don't.
see. It didn't share here.
You might not be sharing the whole screen.
There
There
you
we
go.
go. Yeah, good luck living up there.
This is what's going to be for sale. These peaks. This is La Cumbre Peak. It's
This is my
4,000 feet above sea level.
2,500 elevation commute in 2 miles.
Yes, you will be popping your ears. So, but yeah, like I don't know who this is for. Like you, even mining up here would be a nightmare, honestly. And there's nothing to mine. It's just sandstone. So I guess there's that.
It sounds like a wonderful project that should be taken on by quite literally everyone. If you have the money, mine above Santa Barbara.
Okay, thanks, Ethan.
You're welcome. This is my financial advice.
No, maybe some of this land will be so unbuildable that it'll be super cheap and we can just like buy it for fun. There's
This is
still
true.
land in Arizona. I have looked this up. In high school, I had a friend of mine and we were joking about saving money for this, and I still have the tab bookmarked. There is land in Arizona. You can still buy 1 acre for $1,000, like in the absolute middle of nowhere with no water access and no roadway access.
I'm shocked.
But it is kind of crazy that you can buy land for $1,000. Like that's a pretty low cost of entry.
Yeah, that's pretty cheap.
Um,
Hey, you never know. Prospective buying.
yeah, there you go. It's what built America, after all.
It's true. You just need to build a railroad through it.
I remember one of my favorite ads from the late 1800s. They were trying to get people to buy some of those parcels along the railroad, and the ad was, "You could own property on the next Michigan Avenue," which is like the main street in Chicago.
Yeah. Oh
Not,
my gosh.
not quite.
Yeah, yeah. So, financial advice here: mine north of Santa Barbara, and buy land in rural Arizona.
There you go.
This
That's
is true.
That's the end stuff for you.
And I think that's how we're going to conclude this episode
Beautiful.
today.
Thank
Ladies and gentlemen, and anybody watching, thank you so much for tuning in to another wonderful episode of Radio Free Urbanism. Just want to let everybody know and thank all of our wonderful patrons for listening into this episode. If you want to help support the channel or become a live listener with us or listen to this show early, you can join our Patreon at Radio Free Urbanism on Patreon. Or if you want to check us out in any other way, of course, we are on pretty much every platform. YouTube, Spotify, we're out there, and you can listen in to Radio Free Urbanism. And how much, Sully, would joining our Patreon be?
$1
One single, what country's dollar?
U.S.
US dollar every month. So about 200 Canadian dollars a month, you can join and become a patron of Radio Free Urbanism
Yeah,
and get
you
perks
can
like
either
early
save
access to the
$1,000
show.
to buy land in Arizona, or you could just spend $1 supporting the show.
You could invest in Radio Free Urbanism, and for that would get you early access to the show, access to our live chat, and to support the show. We are here, and I want to thank you once again and every one of our patrons. My name is Ethan. I run a channel called Climate and Transit, and if you want to tune in to that, you can follow me on literally any social media at Climate and Transit. I'm not on Twitter, though, and I'm not on Facebook. Sully, how can the good people find out where you're making your own content?
My channel is called Sullyville, and I promise that I'm coming out with a K-Line LAX metro station video in the imminent future. That is going to be my next video. I have all the footage,
Well,
and I'm still editing it.
We can't wait for that, Sully. We also do have our other co-host, Nick Laporte, who isn't here, who runs his channels at Nick the Door. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in to another wonderful episode of Radio Free Urbanism. As always, train good, car bad.
2 feet fantastic.
Wonderful to hear that. Signing off.
Adios.